Welcome to the Preseason Aquatic Facility Safety Meeting. Thanks for joining us online as we prepare for this year's swimming season. First, let's meet your friendly neighborhood health inspector. If you have a swimming pool, spa, or other aquatic facility in North Richland Hills, you'll be dealing with one of the three lovely people on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us with your questions. Another good thing to know is that there's always an inspector on duty. You can reach out to us at any time, day or night, by contacting the 24-hour emergency number at the bottom of the screen if you have an urgent issue. This is the police non-emergency dispatch, and all you'll need to do is tell them your address and that you need a health inspector, and one of us will come within 30 minutes and help you.
So let's talk about why we're here today. It boils down to the three reasons on the slide. We want to prevent people that are using your facilities from drowning, from getting hurt, or from getting sick. So during this class, we're going to talk about how to prevent drownings and other types of injuries on your property, what's new with aquatic facilities in Texas and in our area, and we'll review what you're required to do by ordinance in NRH in regards to your permitted aquatic facility.
Texas and Tarrant County have a drowning problem. It affects both adults and children, but drowning is the second leading cause of death for Texas kids. Since 2011, over 1,000 kids have fatally drowned in the state of Texas. That would fill about 14 full-size school buses. The consensus is that we're leading the U.S. in numbers of fatal child drownings. We usually tie with Florida, and Tarrant County leads Texas. The tragedy is that every one of those fatal drownings was preventable. By paying attention to the things we're going to discuss in this class, you're going to make it less likely that someone on your property is included in those numbers moving forward. If you do a web search for Texas apartment pool drowning or Texas hotel pool drowning, you'll find an appalling selection of stories like the ones on this slide. When these incidents happen, it doesn't just result in life-changing injury or death. It doesn't just tear families apart. There are legal, financial, and social consequences too. And our goal as Consumer Health is to help you identify and address safety hazards so that your property in our city don't show up in someone's future Google search. That's why this class is so important, and that's why it's required by NRH ordinance for all public pool operators. And you all have a very important role to play in preventing drowning and preventing people from getting hurt on your property. Most of the rules that you're required to follow are based in best practices for drowning and injury prevention. We call these the layers of protection, because drowning is not something that can be prevented by taking one step. We can't say, hey, teach everyone how to swim, and then nobody can drown, because even if you know how to swim, people can still get hurt. People can still get tired. Stuff happens. Drowning is really difficult to prevent because you need multiple steps in place to keep people safe. And that's why these are called the layers of protection. We're trying to layer on as much protection as we can around that pool so that you either prevent people from accessing the pool in the first place, you slow them down, or you have what you need to safely rescue someone as quickly as possible. And you'll recognize a lot of the layers of protection in this graphic. A fence, safety signage, safety equipment like the ring buoy and the shepherd's crook for rescuing people, float lines, safe drain covers, and those things are your responsibility by law to provide for your property and your residents.
And one thing that we would really like to see is that everybody familiarize themselves with the ABCs of drowning prevention. That's the graphic on the left side of the screen. It's basically the layers of protection repackaged in a way that is easy for anybody to understand. You can use this to educate visitors and residents on your property about how to protect themselves and their family from drowning. And when they protect themselves, they're also protecting you from those negative things that can happen. You guys are not alone in this. You have an enormous opportunity to get the word out to people about this problem, and we have resources to help you. The website on the right that's on top is NRH Water Safety 365. That's the city's drowning prevention website. And we have the graphics for the layers of protection and the ABCs of drowning prevention on that website for you to share. There's some flyers and posters that you can hang up. There's a rhyming storybook about water safety that's also a coloring book that you can download and print out. It's aimed at kids and teaching kids about water safety, but it also has a lot of information for parents included in that book on how to protect their family. There's lesson plans for childcare age kids. There's a lot of good stuff on there. If you haven't seen that website, really recommend checking it out, because we'll talk to people when we're on your property. If we see something, we'll talk to residents and try to educate them, but we're only there once a month for maybe an hour or so. You guys are there all the time. You're going to see when there's a herd of 10-year-olds that doesn't have an adult in sight, hanging out at one of your pools, and you're going to know how dangerous that is. You're going to be able to see if there's kids in the water and the adult isn't paying attention and doesn't have eyes on them. And you're going to know that drowning's completely silent and quick, and be able to get some kind of message across that might save somebody's life. The website at the bottom, nrhtx.com/aquatic facilities, that's the consumer health website for public pools and spas. That's specifically for you guys. And we have put a ton of resources on there for you. We have an opening checklist that is basically our inspection checklist. And when you're ready to open your pool or spa for the season, you can look at that checklist and go down line by line and make sure that you're good to go before we ever show up. We also have water chemistry logs that we've already made for you. If you don't have any or you want something more robust, feel free to use ours. They're on there. And there are a lot of fact sheets and handouts that we've found useful over the years to hand out, things that we've created because of questions that people have asked. If you haven't checked out that website, also a really good one to check out. So I want to just roll through the ABCs of drowning prevention briefly and walk you through each one. The letter A is for active adult supervision. And we say active adult supervision because drowning is totally silent. It doesn't happen like in the movies when there's a lot of screaming or splashing when somebody's drowning. A person who's drowning, they can't scream or splash. So there's almost no noise at all when it starts to happen. And it happens so quickly, guys. In less than 2 minutes, that person is gone. So it's really important that when kids are in the water, there's an adult that has eyes on them. They're not distracted by cell phones or talking with parents or doing something else. They have to have eyes on those kids in the water so that they don't miss that crucial moment that they could step in and save that kid. And one of the best tools for this is going to be the Water Watcher tag. We have a lot of these that were given to us by Safe Kids North Texas and Cook Children's Hospital. If you want some for your property, just reach out to us and let us know. But in the picture, you can see that the adult is wearing a card on her wrist, on a bracelet. That's the Water Watcher tag. It basically says, when kids are in the water, I'm the one that's responsible for watching them. And it's great when you're having a pool party or multiple people using the pool, because one adult can wear this card and keep eyes on kids in the water for 10 or 15 minutes. And then at the end of that 10 or 15 minutes, they switch that card over to another adult, and that adult becomes the water watcher. So this is a concept that we want you guys all to be familiar with and encourage on your property to help protect people.
So let's talk about B for barriers. As a public pool operator, you're required by law to maintain a safe and effective enclosure around your pool. The fence, gates, doors, and windows that lead into the pool area must meet certain standards required by law. And those rules exist so that it's more difficult for kids to sneak into the pool without anybody knowing. So let's talk about what this means on a daily basis for you. This means checking to make sure that there's no damage to your fence, that doors or gates that lead to the pool aren't left propped open, that they're self-closing and self-latching, and that there's no gaps under the fence large enough for a 4-inch ball to fit under. If you need to close your pool to residents for a safety reason, for example, you just administered chemicals into the water, or you have a piece of safety equipment missing, You have to lock all the entrances to residents and post a sign that the pool is closed. So let's move on to the letter C in our ABCs of water safety. C is for classes. And a lot of the time when we say classes, we're talking to people about swim classes, not just for kids, but for adults, because it's never too late to learn how to swim. But there are a lot of other classes that will be really helpful to you guys as public pool operators too. And one that springs to mind is CPR first aid. All adults should know CPR and basic first aid. It's useful in so many situations, not just if you have a public pool, but there's a much higher chance that someone's going to get hurt around a swimming pool. And if that happens, you want to know what to do. NRH Fire Department actually holds monthly CPR first aid classes here in town. So if you're interested in taking this, I've put their website on the screen there to the left so that you can see how to sign up. And the other class that's really going to involve you all is the Certified Pool Operator class, or CPO. This is a great class about swimming pool and spa operation. It's a training and certification offered by the Pool and Hot Tub Association. And CPO is required at every public pool in Texas by state law. In North Richland Hills, the CPO must also register as the certified pool operator for the property. That registered CPO must be able to respond to the property within 1 hour of being notified by the consumer health inspector that there's a problem. Now we're on letter D of the ABCs of water safety. And D stands for drains and devices. So let's talk about drains. The swimming pool drains are not the same as the drains in the bathtub or the drains in the sink. Swimming pool drains are connected to a pump, and that pump is like a giant vacuum cleaner. If a drain cover's missing or if it's damaged, somebody could get stuck on that drain underwater, and you won't be able to get them off until the pump is shut off, which means they can't breathe until that pump is shut off. So there are really strict rules about drain systems and drain covers for public pools. You have to have a specific drain setup, a specific number and size of drains, very specific drain covers, and those covers have a maximum flow rate and life expectancy. This is something that your inspector will evaluate on at least an annual basis, but you should also be looking at those drain covers every day to make sure that they're still there, they're not damaged, and that you can see them clearly at the bottom of the pool. Because if they're missing, damaged, or you can't see them, that's a huge safety issue, and you have to close and lock your pool to residents at that point. Devices can mean lots of things when we're talking about water safety. It can mean life vest when you're out on open water, or if you're in a pool and you're not a strong swimmer. It can mean alarms on doors and windows that open into the pool area. And for you guys, it also includes most of your safety equipment, signage, and the emergency phone. You should be checking all of those things frequently to make sure that they're still working and that they're in good shape. So the two photos on this slide are from past inspections. You guys can see the photo on the left has a missing drain cover. The photo on the right, that's a ring buoy that I found at a property that had a broken safety rope. So that ring buoy's for rescue. It has a safety line that you can throw it out to somebody and then pull them back in. And that rope goes all the way around the ring buoy, but it's hanging by a thread. So if somebody pulled on it, it's probably going to break. And these are examples of safety issues that you should be looking for on the daily and making sure that they're fixed before that pool opens back up to residents. So I want to move on and put a couple of codes on your radar. The first one is the International Swimming Pool and Spa Safety Code. Texas officially adopted the 2018 ISPSC as the municipal swimming pool code for the state in September of 2020. And the most recent Texas Public Pool Code also adopted the 2021 ISPSC in January 2023. You can find these codes at the website at the bottom of the slide. This code was developed by the International Code Council and the Association of Pool and Spa Professionals. It applies to both public and residential aquatic facilities, and it's really focused on construction and design of swimming pools and spas. So this code really applies to you if you're building a new pool or spa, remodeling your pool or spa, or replacing equipment, or if you're repairing your existing pool or spa. It doesn't generally address daily operational standards, but it's really important to know about. Another really important code that you need to know about is the state public pool code. Texas adopted new and additional rules for public pools and spas statewide. And if you're watching this video, you're considered a public pool or spa. This code contains rules for both construction and daily operation of public pools and spas, so it affects both new and existing facilities, and it's really worth reading these over. The new rules have updated signage requirements, updated water chemistry requirements, and also require that a specific type of backflow preventer be installed to separate your swimming pool from other water lines. Maintaining safe water chemistry in the swimming pool is a huge responsibility for your property. By keeping the water chemistry at safe levels, you're keeping people from getting sick and you're making it easier to rescue them because the water chemistry affects the clarity and visibility in the swimming pool. There's several aspects of water chemistry that you should be checking at least once a day, and many of you are Class B pools that require multiple water chemistry checks per day. The state of Texas recently added limits for combined chlorine, ORP, which is oxidation reduction potential, alkalinity, calcium hardness, and algae. They also added requirements to keep the water balanced. Water chemistry records must now be kept on site for a minimum of 3 years. However, we recommend that you keep those as long as you can. One of the newer changes that's come about in the state code recently is that water has to be balanced in public swimming pools. And we usually calculate this through something called the Langelier Saturation Index. There's plenty of math for it. There's plenty of factors that you have to look at if you feel really interested in this and want to dig into it, but there's easier ways to do that, and we'll talk about it here in just a minute. I want to take a few slides to talk about what this means and why it's important to you.
Water balance is important because it tells us whether the water is too acidic or corrosive, or whether the water is too basic or scaling. And what I have for you is 2 pieces of equipment on the screen. The equipment on the left was exposed to water that was too corrosive or acidic. And you can see that that acidic water etched out the inside of that equipment. Acidic water will eat the inside of your equipment. It will eat your plaster. That's why it's bad. And the equipment on the right was exposed to water that was too basic or scaling. And when water's too basic, it will allow minerals and different kinds of things to accumulate on the inside of your equipment and on the inside of your plaster. So you can see either way, whether the water's too acidic or too basic, it causes damage to your equipment and to your pool. And that's why it's really important that the water be balanced. If you're really not feeling up to doing a bunch of math and calculating things out by hand, there's a lot of tools available to you. And to throw it out there, your health inspector is also available to you. If you have any questions about how to calculate water balance, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to spend an afternoon with you explaining how to do this and how to use whatever tool you decide to use to do it. One of the best tools that you have when you're trying to figure out water balance comes in your test kit. Most people use a test kit, and if you're using a Taylor test kit, they have a watergram water balance calculator inside the test kit. It's that little wheel that's made of paper. If you've ever wondered what it's for, this is what it's for. You move things around on the wheel and it automatically calculates water balance for you after you've found your temperature and your total alkalinity and those other levels. So I have a YouTube video that I've found that really explains how to use this well. I encourage you to watch that, and if you have any questions about how to use it, reach out to your health inspector. You can also find a ton of online calculators that you just plug in the values that you got for total alkalinity, calcium hardness, temperature, all of that good stuff, and it will spit out the number for you at the end and tell you whether your water is balanced or not. When you start to look at your water balance, you're going to get your water unbalanced eventually. And you're going to run into the situation of trying to figure out what to fix first. So when that happens, this slide is here just to kind of give you some guidance of what to do when it happens. The first thing to remember is that we're still focused on pH, disinfectant, which is free chlorine or bromine levels, and cyanuric acid. Those three parameters are what are important for health or safety. If those aren't in the acceptable range, it's not safe for people to swim. So you always have to make sure that you get those into an acceptable range before you do anything else. But once those are in the acceptable range and they're stable, if your water's still unbalanced, the next parameter that you want to focus on is total alkalinity. Address that next if you're trying to get your water back in balance. And when you address total alkalinity, address it first and then let it sit for a day. Don't try to address alkalinity and pH and calcium hardness and everything else on the same day. Buy what you need to get the alkalinity up or get it down. If you have any questions on how to do that, reach out to your health inspector. Wait a day and then try to address some of the other factors. Right? If you've addressed total alkalinity and your water's not balanced, the next parameter to focus on is pH. And this is only if your pH started in the acceptable range of 7.2 to 7.8. Okay? If you address alkalinity and pH, water's still unbalanced, then go to calcium hardness, and from there, other factors if you need to. By that point, you probably won't need to. If you're stumped, contact your health inspector.
Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about facility-related items. And this slide's really important because we're talking about if you need to remodel, repair, add some piece of equipment, change out an old piece of equipment for a new piece of equipment. The message here is before you change anything with your equipment, your drains, your decks, or your fences, you need to talk to us first. Reach out to your health inspector, let them know what you're planning to do. Let us look at the plans and the quotes from your contractor so that we can make sure that it's in compliance with code. What we really want to avoid is going out after you've spent all this time and money repairing something and then we find it's not to code and you have to redo everything. There's also a plan review checklist that goes over the major requirements in code at our website, but really reach out to us before you do anything. We'll help you figure out what you need. One thing that we see as inspectors, a piece of equipment that gets changed out frequently that is really important and people don't know about are heaters. Pools and spas are heck on heaters, and both pool code and plumbing code have really specific requirements for pool and spa heaters. The state of Texas has boiler requirements if the heater for your pool meets the requirements of a boiler. A licensed plumber has to install these and a building permit's required. So again, don't change equipment without talking to your health inspector first. Never believe a contractor when they tell you a permit's not required without checking with us first. And don't buy anything until you've at least had a chance to run it by us. All right, and the reason that I'm talking about heaters so much is because there really are a surprising number of incidents involving heaters for swimming pools that have caused a lot of injuries and even deaths. So the example that I have on the slide for you is a carbon monoxide poisoning from Marysville, Ohio. They're still investigating this, but they really are leaning more towards this was a carbon monoxide poisoning from the spa heater that wasn't properly vented and didn't have any kind of alarm to it. But the secondary explanation of this is that the carbon dioxide system, which some people use to control pH instead of acid, was also malfunctioning. This particular event sent 13 people to the hospital. So again, before you change equipment, especially heaters, talk with your health inspector before making these changes. And if you don't already have one, make sure that you install a carbon monoxide monitor in your pump room and in the swimming area if you're using gas-powered appliances or carbon dioxide systems. If you're using a carbon dioxide system, you're required by fire code to install both carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide monitors. So reach out to your health inspector if you have any questions about this.
This seems like a really good time to bring up chemical interlock safety. And there's a video about this that explains it better than I ever could. I really encourage you to visit the website at the bottom of the screen and watch this video. It's less than 10 minutes long, and it's really amazing. I'm not sure why I couldn't get it to work for the PowerPoint, but you're stuck with me talking about this. So if you have an automatic chemical dispenser, this applies to you. Whether it's for liquid chlorine or acid or any other kind of chemical that's automatically getting injected into the flow. Chemical interlock safety means that when the power goes out or your flow rate drops, that the chemical dispenser stops working. Okay, and this is something that your electrician can check for you or can put in place for you. You need to make sure that you have this in place, because a lot of pool chemicals are incompatible with each other. You think acid and chlorine, when they mix together, they create chlorine gas. It can hurt people, it can kill people. It's happened in other places in the country. So make sure that you have this in place. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to one of us.
So I just want to show you guys a picture of what chemical interlock safety might look like on your property. This is a pool shore system, which a lot of you guys are using. What they'll do is they'll install the pressure switch, which is this blue box that's highlighted in the red. That is your chemical interlock safety. It's going to turn off the chemical feeder if the water flow gets too low or if the power goes out.
Okay, y'all, I know that is a lot of new information to throw at you really fast, but we're almost to the end of the class. This is probably the most important section of the class here at the end, so please kind of wake up a little bit. I promise next year, if we're in person, we're going to play Jeopardy and we're going to eat donuts, okay? But let's talk about what you need to do before you open your pool this year. The first thing you need to do is make sure that one person on your staff is a registered certified pool operator. That means they've gone to the CPO class and gotten their certificate, and then they've brought that certificate up to City Hall, to Neighborhood Services, and gotten their registered CPO card from Consumer Health. If you have any questions on how to do this, reach out to us. The other thing you need to make sure you do is get an electrician out again to look at your pools and spas and your pump room, fill out the annual electrical inspection form, and have that ready for us because we'll need a copy of it for your opening inspection. Third thing on the list is attend this safety class. After this class is over, complete the 10-question quiz that's on the website and email that back to us at consumerhealth@nrhtx.com. All right, and lastly, pass your Consumer Health opening inspection. It's mid-March, so we're starting to get out and do preliminary pool inspections. The way this works is that your health inspector does a preliminary full inspection to try and find out, is there anything that's gone wrong since last year? What problems do we need to fix before the pool reopens? And we'll give you a list of those things that you need to fix. Once those things are fixed and your water chemistry is balanced, everything's working again, you call your health inspector back out for an opening inspection when you're ready. And after you pass that opening inspection, you can open the pool for the year. Now, all the pool permits expire on April 1st every year. So if you close for the season at all, your gates have to lock and close to residents and visitors on April 1st. If you're open year-round, you have to pass an opening inspection by May 1st. Otherwise, you're going to have to close your doors unless your health inspector says otherwise. If you have any kind of question about this process, you need to reach out to us. If you've taken this class before, this slide is going to be really familiar to you because it's the most important slide of the entire class. If you've been sleeping up till now, pay attention to this slide because you really need to know this information, okay? The conditions on the screen, if any of these exist, it's your responsibility to close your pool or spa and then lock the gates and doors to the enclosure so that your residents and visitors cannot access it. We're going to walk through each one of these conditions one by one. right? So the first one is if your water chemistry is not in acceptable range. And when we talk about water chemistry, we're not talking about calcium hardness, okay? We're talking about the water chemistry that's necessary for health and safety. That's going to be free chlorine, pH, and cyanuric acid. Now, there have been a couple of parameters added in with the rule changes, like combined chlorine, that could be necessary for health and safety. We still haven't quite figured out which ones are going to be necessary or not. But these three, if they're out of range, the pool has to close because it's not going to be safe to swim. First is free chlorine. It has to be between 2 or 8 parts per million if you're using cyanuric acid or stabilizer. If you're not using cyanuric acid or stabilizer, it's 1 to 8 parts per million. Free chlorine is important because it's what's killing bacteria and parasites and viruses in your pool water and keeping them from infecting people that are swimming. Okay. The second health and safety chemistry parameter is pH. pH has to be maintained between 7.2 and 7.8. The reason for this is because at that level of pH, free chlorine is best able to do its job. And also, it's much less likely that you're going to burn somebody's eyes or skin if the pH is in that neutral range. The third parameter that you really need to pay attention to is cyanuric acid. It has to remain less than 90 parts per million, because at 90 parts per million, it won't let free chlorine do its job and disinfect the pool water. You're not required to have cyanuric acid or stabilizer. Okay, and if you're an indoor pool or a spa, you're not allowed to use cyanuric acid or stabilizer. But if you have it, you need to make sure that it stays less than 90 parts per million. Okay, moving on. If the bottom of the pool or the drains aren't visible, you have to close it. Somebody could get down there and you wouldn't know they're down there if you can't see them. So that's the whole reason that condition exists. Also, if you can't see the pool drains, odds are your water chemistry is not in the acceptable range. Okay? You also need to make sure that you're looking at your drains and your drain covers every day, because if those covers are damaged or missing or anything damages your drains, it's not safe for people to swim. The pool pump's like a vacuum cleaner, and if somebody gets down there and those drain covers are damaged or there's something wrong with the drain, the pool pump will suck them down onto that drain, and they won't be able to come off until the pool pump goes off. So really important, again, if drain covers are damaged or missing, close the pool. If your pool pump stops working, pool or spa is closed. Okay? The circulation equipment's necessary because it helps circulate those chemicals and keep that water chemistry good. If the emergency phone's not working, in most cases, you're going to have to close off the enclosure. There's certain situations where we can allow you to have a temporary emergency phone or have staff out there, monitoring to make sure that if there's an emergency, they can call 911. Just reach out to your health inspector if that happens and it's something you need. All right, if your fence or enclosure has been damaged, you have to secure it. And until it's fixed, nobody can use the pool or spa. Right? Your gates and doors, you also need to check and make sure that they are self-closing, self-latching, they're still in good shape. Because if they're not working, you need to lock them and secure them. If your safety equipment is missing or damaged, you have to close until you can replace that safety equipment. So that's going to include your shepherd's crook, your ring buoy with your safety line, your float lines that separate the shallow from the deep end, any of your safety signage, or your backboards. If the emergency shutoff for your pool or your spa isn't working, that's a problem that would require you to close the pool. And we have a catch-all phrase at the end that says, any other potentially hazardous condition. That means maybe somebody got a little rowdy on a weekend and threw a bunch of glass bottles into the bottom of your pool. Broken glass is a problem. It could cut up somebody's foot. You've got to close at that point until you can address that situation and get it fixed. Maybe a tree falls into the pool enclosure. Maybe a car goes through it. I feel like knocking on wood while I'm saying this. If any other potentially hazardous condition exists, it's your responsibility to make sure that your residents and visitors cannot get to that pool. All right, and really the message I'm trying to get across, Don't forget, if there's something hazardous, you need to close your pool and then post it as closed on the gates and doors. Okay, it has to be locked to residents and visitors and then posted that it's closed. If you guys do this on your own before we show up for a safety check, there's no penalties assessed by Consumer Health. We're going to show up and say, oh, look, there's a hazardous condition there, but you have locked your gates, you've secured your enclosure, you're doing exactly what you want to do. Your health inspector's going to be super happy. They're going to tell you good job. And you're going to avoid any situations that might come out of that hazard that would be bad for you. Okay? The other thing we want to get across is don't change any of your equipment, your decks, your fences, or especially your drains without first talking to your health inspector. And if you're replastering, you don't have to get a pool permit, but we're never going to have our feelings hurt if you call us and say, hey, I'm replastering. Can you come out and look at the tile? Can you come out and make sure that everything looks good? We're going to be happy to do that for you because we want to avoid problems that we can catch on the front end and not have you go back and fix later.
Okay, we're going to walk through some past inspection photos of properties that are here in North Richland Hills. And what we're about to walk through, this is basically things that we don't want you to do. Unfortunately, this photo is one that we see quite frequently as health inspectors, and it's one of the most dangerous things that you can do on your property. And that's leaving gates or doors that lead to the pool area propped open like this. You may think that you're only going to be gone for a minute or that you're in the pool area so you can keep an eye on things if someone comes in, but it only takes a split second for a toddler to run away from their grown-up handler. And when they go in that water, drowning is completely silent. So unless you're actively watching, you may not catch it. Nobody might catch it. They can drown in 2 minutes, and then that changes everybody's lives forever. So if you see this on your property, please take steps to address it. This is another property that is doing a very similar thing. They have their gate locked open. You guys can see that the lock for the gate is set through the little hole for the latch so that that gate won't latch when it closes. And this is extremely dangerous. Their pool is also emerald green, so if a toddler did get into that water, you're not going to know they're down there until it's too late. This is, again, super dangerous. Please don't allow this to happen on your property.
Here's one that's from a property that installed an automatic chemical dispenser. And I don't know how well you can see it, but on the left is the chlorine dispenser. And it's leaking. It's leaking very badly at this point, okay? A health inspector showed up for a safety check, and when we opened up the pump room door, you could actually see the fumes get vented out of the pump room. So when it aired out, we were able to take a look and see what was going on. And what had started as a very small leak at the chemical dispenser the week before became a really big leak by the end of the week. And the CPO hadn't been checking on it to see what was going on. Small leaks become big leaks really, really fast. Okay, and that's exactly what happened in this situation. It just kept feeding chlorine through this leak. Nothing was going to the pool, so the controller kept telling the chemical dispenser, yeah, it needs more bleach, needs more chlorine, and filled up the bottom of the pump room floor. The picture on the right, you guys can kind of see where that chlorine ran down to the right side of the pump room, and it's around the acid barrel. Remember when we said that chlorine and acid are not compatible? Luckily it hadn't gotten through that barrel, but there was plenty of other chemical residue on the floor that chlorine interacted with, enough to create some really dangerous fumes. And this is definitely an example of any other condition that would be potentially hazardous and make you close your pool. That chlorine could have off-gassed as chlorine gas, and then when somebody breathes it in, it becomes hydrochloric acid in their lungs and could hurt them. So it was really lucky that the inspector or the certified pool operator didn't get a mouthful of chlorine when they open that door. Here's a couple of other examples of something we commonly run into that would be considered any other potentially hazardous condition. For whatever reason, sometimes kids or people feel like they need to pull your pool lights out of the wall. And when this happens, it's dangerous because you have that electrical wiring that's exposed. It becomes an entrapment hazard and it becomes an electrical hazard. Somebody could get trapped in that wiring or trapped on that light, and then they're stuck underwater, unable to breathe. Or the GFCI that's required for that light may not work, and somebody could get electrocuted. So if somebody pulls your lights out, please close and lock the pool.
So here's some things that we want to make sure stay on your radar. If there's a safety hazard on site, you need to close and lock your pool and spa enclosure to residents. The certified pool operator must be able to respond within 1 hour of being notified that there's a problem on site. You need to check your water chemistry enough to maintain safe water and record those checks at least once a day. Those records have to stay on site for a minimum of 3 years, although we recommend keeping them as long as you can. And at least daily, you should be checking your drain covers for damage, for looseness, and be aware of their life expectancy. And that's the end of this year's preseason pool safety class. Now that you've seen the video, download the quiz and fill it out and email it to us. At least one person every year from each property has to watch this class and submit the quiz. And if you have any questions or we can help you out at all, please reach out to us. Thanks again for attending the preseason pool safety class.